Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Leftist Lorax. I'm joined with Dick Warlock and Audio Works. Um, I'm joined here with Joe Glenton, who is a
Hello.
notorious Tory MP of the Northern UK. I can't tell you where it is because I know nothing about the UK. But no, seriously, Joe Glenton is he wrote the book Soldier Box. He's an Afghanistan veteran, served in Kandahar, if I'm correct. Uh, Spoke out, deserted, but also consciously objected. Um, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But joined here with Dick Warlock, of course, our co-host. And it's 8 p.m. over there, so we're doing an early show today, and it's noon here on the West Coast. At least we got some clear skies and fires. But Joe, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell everyone who you are. A little bit of background.
Oh, a sordid tale. So I'm a journalist these days, a writer. But in my dark past, I was also in the British Army. I was a redcoat, if you like. That'll go down well with your audience.
Lobster back.
That's it. That's it. But I joined in 2004. I went to Afghanistan, did a tour in Afghanistan. Came back, was kind of planning to just get out. I kind of came away with some slowly crystallizing views about what we were doing there and whether or not it was helpful or right or moral. And I was just going to get out, but as it happened, they tried to send me on another tour. So I tried to pursue conscientious objection, which is kind of hard here. They refused that. I had PTSD from my tour as well, so I kind of voted with my feet, which I guess is something will be familiar to a lot of veterans who've done a runner. So I left, went on the run, was away about 18 months, came back, much more political by the time I came back, I think. While I was still serving, I became an anti-war activist, which is obviously frowned upon by the British ruling class, as you'd imagine. And I was charged with various things: desertion, speaking to the press, all kinds of stuff. Came to a court-martial, and I ended up I've got 9 months in Colchester military prison, famously called the Glass House in this country, which is our only military prison. So did 5 months of a 9-month sentence there, was booted out of the army and prison on the same day. That was in 2010, so I was in for about 5.5, 6 years. And eventually became a journalist, wrote a book, doing the really short version here, and kind of continued in that path as an anti-war activist, anti-imperialist, a journalist in that mode, and a writer. And I'm now 10 years on, I've just been commissioned to write another book, which will be a critique of a look at, it's called veteranhood, so it's a look at the conditions of former armed forces personnel in this country. It's kind of a gonzo kind of ethnography kind of thing, looking at the issues which inflame us and agitate us and motivate ex-military personnel of different generations to it's really an attempt to kind of look at what we are and what we can be potentially. So yeah, that's in a nutshell, but that's me.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us. I know it's kind of difficult to coordinate with times, but I'm glad we could have you on.
Yeah.
One big thing, I was listening to and watching some of your old interviews when you were going on, your interview tour. Like there's a show called Hard Talk I was listening to, and just some of the questions that the guy was asking was very like, so do you feel like you're a traitor? Are you sure you're going against the queen? Like you're not going against the queen? Did you feel any empathy towards the queen when you left? Those kind of questions are bullshit. And I feel like because of the scope and because the Royal Army and the different branches in the UK and the population, you got a huge microscope put on you when you were very outspoken against the war on terror after your tour in Kandahar. But I do want to kind of go back to the day you decided to put in your papers and decide to go through your chain of command, which obviously failed you as a soldier. Where'd you go? Well, I know in your book, and not everyone's read your book, Soldier Box, but Where did you go?
Excellent, by the way.
I've read the first 6 chapters. It's the only free version I
Yeah.
could get on Google Books, but I'm
Okay. Yeah.
buying it. I promise.
Buy
Yeah.
the book. I'll put a link in the
Buy the
chat.
book. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Please help me out. Penniless writer here. So to go back to that day, you want me to go back to that day? Yeah. So it's a strange thing, and I have to, with the benefit of hindsight, I suspect, and I don't know how it is in the States. I don't know if there's a parallel, but conscientious objection here is seen through the prism of World War One. That these kind of white feather, that it's a cowardly thing, rather than what it is, which is a contractual and legal right that you can become one. I suspect my chain of command didn't really know themselves what the process was. So when I went to them, and my regiment was on tour at the time, we were like the skeleton crew. We were rear party,
Yeah.
we call it here. And I had this. My immediate chain of command was this sergeant who was probably quite a badly damaged man himself. He was an alcoholic. He eventually got kicked out of the military for being alcoholic, and he was my chain of command. I was a lance corporal. He was a sergeant. And so the response when I said I'm not going and this is why was fairly nuclear, to be honest. And I wonder if I'd had different people in my chain of command that they might have. So it's kind of the luck of the draw in a way. But I kind of advanced my case to him, and it turned into that kind of military ping pong where I was like, no, I'm not, and he was like, yes, you are, and he was like back and forth about whether I was going on tour. And then it eventually got another layer up to my staff sergeant, who just it was never going to happen. On reflect, I always feel that had I not had PTSD from tour and not been at a particularly low ebb, that I would have been able to put that case more strongly. But I was kind of coming apart. I was self-medicating as well myself, and so that didn't happen. So as I was saying, I voted with my feet and left, and went on the run. I felt that I'd gone as far as I could with the hierarchy, really. But it was a very strange moment because I kind of, I'm from a very working class background. The army's was framed to me. We all know this stuff, but was framed to me as a route out of that, as a engine for social mobility, as they like to frame it, which is bullshit, of course. But and so I like the army. Like I for the most part I enjoyed it. I like being in the army, and I was promoted very quickly. I did quite well on tour, etc., etc. But that kind of keenness to advance collided with the kind of realities of our deployment to Afghanistan and the things that I gleaned from that experience.
Yeah.
And so it's a very strange and conflicted moment for me when because I was in this position where I kind of loved being a soldier and I drank the Kool-Aid and wanted to do that. But then there was this much more powerful, conscientious objection, I guess is what you would call it, where I couldn't contemplate going back morally. But I still had these lingering questions about whether if it was a different set of senior non-commissioned officers or officers, it could have gone a different way. Because there are other examples of other people I know trying to file for objection, I suppose, over the same conflict, and them getting to the conscientious objectors board, and they were rejected anyway under strange circumstances. But if it had been other people, there's potential I could have got to that process.
Mm-hmm.
Got to that point in the process. As it was, I didn't. So I was AWOL for 18 months. I left the country with my blood money from tour. It's probably the richest I'd ever been. I've come back from operations with quite a bit of cash. I think I had about $8,000 UK, which was like a huge lump of money for me.
Yeah.
And I went away, exploded, did the drinking, did the drugs, ended up in Australia, weirdly, blagged my way into Australia, got this fucking tourist visa. That was online. And I remember very clearly there was 2 questions on there. And one of them was like, have you ever been part of a terrorist organization? And I was like, no. And there was another question that was like, do you have any training with firearms and explosives? And I was like, no. And then 2 days later, it was like, well, welcome to Australia. I got this visa. And so I ended up being there for 18 months. I'm surprised I didn't get nabbed on the way in. I mean, for a country which has such strict immigration policies,
Yeah.
if you're white, I'm
About to
surprised.
say if you were brown and tried that, I don't know.
Yeah, I
don't
wouldn't
know
have
if
got
you'd be able to get through.
anywhere near if I had a different name. But yeah, so it was a strange moment, and much strangeness followed in the years after that moment of refusal.
Yeah, and so we have a tier system of discharges here in the U.S. There's honorable, there's other than honorable, there's bad conduct discharge or big chicken dinner. There's I think there's one other, but if you get anything other than honorable, you're usually not getting benefits. Now, how were you treated when you left? I mean, were you treated more as a traitor, or are you still labeled as a traitor, or were the British people more forgiving of your situation?
It's interesting here because I've come across this many times with American friends who've run into this discharge system. We don't really have that here. We don't really have bad conduct or dishonorable or anything like that. It's like administrative, and I think most of them are administrative discharges. Basically, I think that's the kind of default mode, and mine certainly was anyway. 40 months. So I'm not particularly entitled to any benefits anyway. Because I was only in for 5.5 years. My pension I haven't resolved yet. I assume I'm entitled to some degree of pension, but it's a slightly different system over here to the honourable dishonourable discharge. Yeah, in fact, and it's an interesting point that maybe we should raise that we have a really strangely low bar to be a veteran in Britain. You have to have served 1 day. You have to have received 1 day's pay from the military. It's really obscure, and there's a story behind it. But that's the basic definition. But I've gone on tours and finished basic training, all that. So
Oh.
I was in that broader category of veterans. But in terms of the response, it was mixed. Like some of the guys I served with were okay, and some weren't. I guess there's a diversity of opinion, just like there is. I mean, the army tends to lean right. Our army is hyper conservative, just like yours. It's obviously in love with its imperial past. Everything's Empire this, World War II. I like to say Britain as a whole, not just the army, runs on Windows 1945. We're still clinging to that. We need an update badly. Please help. But yeah, a mix of opinions. There's obviously like a large cohort of really reactionary military people and veterans who really didn't like what I did. It's a point of pride for me that there was briefly a Hang Joe Glenton Facebook group. It might even still be there. But I took that as a badge of honor because I'm not trying to impress those kind of people. But there were lots. I've still got loads of mates I was in with, some of whom have come over to the light side with me. And yeah, like a mixed bag of opinion. But I guess as in the US, the military is a sensitive topic, and there are particular ingrained attitudes about what it means to be a soldier, what it means to be a veteran, which tend to be reactionary. So I definitely ran into some friction along the way, but that is not at all the whole story. There were lots of people who were serving, who were ex-military, who were civilians, who were also very supportive. Because Afghanistan wasn't a popular war here. I mean, it's a very unpopular conflict.
Joe, I should tell you that I am a member of the Joe Glenton is a stinking crap hat Facebook.
Did you start it though? Was it you?
It was me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm the first joiner, so I'm really leader.
I joined it. I joined it as well. I kind of wanted to see what was. I mean, I'm not against it. He's a dodgy character.
Is there? Lie. I imagine the Venn diagram between like that and like the UKIP Tommy Robinson crowd is probably just a fucking circle, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, and there's it's an issue here. I know there's been in Germany and the States, there's been big investigations into the presence of the far right in the military. Whereas here we've had like neo-Nazis have been convicted who are serving, and a load of other people who are veterans, but we haven't had that level of investigation into it yet. But my feeling is that is present. The different grades, the different grades of the far right. We have Tommy Robinson's like a nationalist. There's that nationalist kind of EDL side. Yeah. There's the electoral version, which today is UKIP. And then obviously there are like batshit crazy actual people who think Hitler was right, and it's sad that he's gone, like full on card carrying neo-Nazis, who are much more of a minority. But I'd say there are vocal cohorts of each of those groups in the veterans and armed forces community. Now, we haven't got to the bottom of it yet.
We have a problem with our special forces who tend to be a majority chuds that like to get out. They're driving around with their Humvee with Trump flags in the Middle East and shit like that. And you know, I remember during the special election, there were like SAS members who were shooting at targets of Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah.
Things
Those
like
are
that.
paratroopers.
Oh, paratroopers. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's the biggest. Most of the SAS come from the paras. I guess the equivalent to your 101st and 82nd.
Yeah.
And that's there was a whole pattern of incidents just like that. When Jeremy Corbyn won the leadership, there was a serving general who implied that there would be a coup if he was to win a general election, and was quoted. And we never identified who he was. We know he had served in Northern Ireland because we knew his age. I can't remember all the details, but I remember covering it at the time.
Yeah.
And there were various things like that. And there was also a pattern of intelligence and military figures, current and former, briefing against Corbyn. My colleagues at Declassified UK, which is a really good investigative website, they've just been blacklisted by the Ministry of Defence. So they're obviously doing something like did an analysis of all these military and defence figures who were briefing against. There was a real establishment assault on Corbyn, predicated on the idea he wasn't very good on defence, but actually that it's his politics that were about that folks. You know, he has a very clear position on Israel Palestine. He was always very against Iraq. He was a key figure in the anti-war movement, etc. So he's a long-time member of the campaign for nuclear disarmament and so on. But there's a real sinister crossover between just cranky far right people, just cranky, you know, those kind of politics, and the establishment, the British establishment, who shared ground when it came to this mildly reformist social democrat who looks like a geography teacher, who, as we were saying, is in their eye the second coming of Lenin. From his allotment. I don't know if very strange.
Wait, so Jeremy Corbyn was not an IRA Palestinian leader?
As it turns out. But there's here's an example of how crazy this shit gets sometimes. Like, there's lots of people who, it's a conspiracy theory that Jeremy Corbyn is like was sympathetic to the IRA, but if you go into the veterans forums, which I'm having to do now for this new book, to look at what these people are saying, there's actually like a subcategory of people who actually believe Jeremy Corbyn didn't just support, but was in the IRA.
That's what I was getting at. I mean, there's definitely theories on that.
Yeah, he's throwing like vegan lasagnas at British Army soldiers on checkpoints in Derry and Belfast. I don't know what they envision it as, but
just like Bernie Sanders holds seances every night to bring back the ghosts of Che Guevara. And
was that a thing?
No, it's probably a thing. It
wouldn't surprise me if someone thought that.
At this point,
I'd say the equivalent would be here is that, like, what the card that's always pulled here is like, did you know Bernie Sanders went to the Soviet Union on his fucking honeymoon? He's a goddamn commie.
What's that film, The Manchurian Candidate? Is that
exactly. Yeah. There's a bit now it's this whole like Bernie has his reins and his like he's leeching onto the Joe Biden campaign and creating this ultra left Marxist radical trans nationalist like.
Yeah. It's just I had this conversation with the guy the other night about this who kind of he wasn't a bad guy, but he's kind of teetering towards the Jordan Peterson. He's a civilian, but what I noted from that conversation, I tried to get him on, was it's always the same words. It's these same like woke, politically correct, cultural Marxist, very popular.
Cultural Marxism is the dragon of chaos.
Yeah. And it's like they're just like saying words, and they don't really understand the context of them. But and in that. And a lot of the anti-Corbynism from the right was this. It's like, you're a liberal, neo-Marxist, postmodernist culture. And it's like, these words are like often completely divergent things.
They're contradictory.
You can't be a postmodernist and a Marxist. Like, it's just not.
Yes. Yeah, Dan Crenshaw does that now. He goes on every team, like the fucking Captain Eye Patch.
Is he the SEAL guy?
Yeah. He goes on TV and he says that shit. He says like, Antifa is a neo-fascist, Marxist, postmodernist.
Radical
Posadist dolphin fuckers, just pulling words straight out of his ass.
And we have then the other side, our liberals, they like to worship people like Pete Buttigieg, who was an intel officer who pushed papers for 6 months in Afghanistan, and he was a reservist, and I served with reserve intel officers, and I know exactly who they are. and then he worked for a McKinsey and Company, and he's basically CIA. Let's just be real, allegedly.
Yeah.
And that's who they worship. They're like, oh, he's a veteran.
Yeah.
But I'm just like the UK. I'm sure the US is they push out any like real vocal anti-war activists, and the vocal anti-war activists we were talking last night, like John Kerry, who threw his medals on the lawn during Vietnam, voted for the war in Iraq. So there's where do they go once they get into the political spectrum? Now I do want to bring back to you mentioned here and in your book that it was, you were working class, you joined for a path and purpose, like a lot of people do. Now here in the US, I feel like if we had healthcare, if we had free university or a path, the poverty draft would go down. A lot of people would have a path to a future. Now in the UK, you have the NHS, you have healthcare, you have now austerity has really brought a lot of poverty, and Thatcherism brought a lot of poverty in the 80s, obviously. So is that a major thing? Is that how most people join the military in the UK, or is it more like, hurrah, I'm joining to save the Queen shit?
I think it's a Western professional army, and in terms of recruitment, it shares a lot with the US. I mean, some things are different, obviously, but I've always theorized it as this spectrum. And at one end, you have these ideological guys, and at the other end, there are more people, and it's generally the idea of economic recruitment, economic conscription. It's important to know that those things, as I'm sure you know, the NHS free university is no longer a thing. When I came out of the army, I was one of the last people to get the 2011, when was just before they put the fees up to make it even less accessible. But I think generally, it's like most of the people I was with joined for money, because they wanted a job, because they wanted to get out of the town they lived in. Often those are northern towns, which Thatcher smashed. The industries are gone, the steel, the coal, etc., etc. You can see the parallels as well. So I think generally, but I also think even the economic guys and girls, I think that's always mixed with the ideological stuff. Even if you really want a job, sometimes it's tacked on in training or after, but generally there's a sense here, as in the US, that the military is a force for good, that you're going to do something moral, because that's how it's. I mean, they think that for a reason. It's because that's what they're told. So I think that it's not so different. Obviously, I mean, some things are different particularly in terms of I call it the American model, in terms of how we talk about veterans and the way veterans are kind of elevated in the public eye. We've borrowed that in the last 15 years. When I joined the military, soldiers weren't popular. In the garrison towns where I started drinking, it was like squatty pub, civilian pub, and that was how it worked. And that's all changed. And we've done that by borrowing this American model. And the reason we did that was because of the kind of internal political crises, but also the crises of Iraq and Afghanistan, and the fact that they were deeply unpopular wars. So it's like same but different, yeah.
So how far are we away from getting a giant British flag, Union Jack, over the field before an EPL game?
Oh no, we're kind of getting there. We're getting there.
Oh my God.
We're not quite there. Maybe there would be a giant British flag towed by a Spitfire going around above Manchester United versus Manchester City or something like that. But they, for example, and it's a really good example. They from about this started in about kind of 2007, 2008 here, the real militarization of sporting events. And the first sign of that, which is continuing, is military personnel giving out the Premier League trophy. Military personnel always visible at Wimbledon. Military personnel there's always a military element to these things. So it might not be as overt or as far down the line as it is in the States, but it is there. And the militarization of the public, of what you can see of public events and sporting events, is definitely present.
And that's wild. And that's wild to bring that up too, Joe. I don't mean to cut you off, but in that time frame, that's when the NFL here started doing its national anthem and the giant flag. They didn't do that, but it turns out the Pentagon had a deal with the NFL.
Well, the controversy there was they were paying. They were they were paying to do recruitment, whereas the NFL made it seem like we just love America so much that we want the troops to be here. And it came out years later that was the Pentagon, DOD would give $500,000 for every one of those fucking patriotic jerk-off festivals that they played. Fun.
Yeah,
Good
we're not
times.
quite there yet. We're not quite there yet, but we're trying to catch up.
Well, we're looking forward to it.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be great. I think there was a point where actually it was Gordon Brown, who a lot of people still consider kind of left Blair's predecessor. I mean, left of Blair is not very left at all, let's face it. And he oversaw Afghanistan. He sent me to Afghanistan.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, the fun, right?
Yeah, Blair's. So one last question before we move into just shooting the shit with the entire group. One thing stood out is, your mother joined the 2 million in London against the war in Iraq, and that was before you joined, right? How was that dynamic? I'm just curious because I have some pretty anti-war parents myself, and like I ended up joining anyways. So there was some conflict in the family with that.
Yeah, I don't know that it was a conflict. I think it was. I remember her going on it. I had no politics. I had zero politics at the time. I'm a child of Thatcher.
Yeah.
It's kind of neoliberal soup that I grew up in.
Yeah.
But my mum, well, I wouldn't say she was that political then. She's very political now. She's like Che Guevara, kicking indoors and
Hey,
stuff.
Yes. Let's go. Let's go.
I'll tell you the story after this, but yeah, this is from a bar in London, actually.
Yeah, I don't know that it was a political thing, but it was a moral thing. And it's interesting at the time that right-wing papers, the Daily Mail, I think, or the Daily Telegraph, right-wing gutter rags, had articles like how to go on a protest, because that was how widely held the view was that Iraq was wrong. They had to like tell Tories how to go, like bring a scarf and a flask of tea, and all this kind of
similar
stuff.
Dynamic right now, actually. Well, during the height of the George Floyd protests, similar dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, it dragged in a much bigger layer. It wasn't just lefties, So that was like nowadays she's much more political, I would say. But it was very much, I think. I mean, you'll have to get her on and ask her.
I would love to have your mom.
Yes.
She's probably watching. Don't tell her. Don't get on, please. She'll embarrass me. Get the baby photos.
I want baby stories. I want baby Joe Glenton stories from your mom, who's Glenton. Am I wrong?
Yeah, but yeah, I think it was a moral thing. I think it was more of a moral thing, and there was no. I think I imagine that as a mother, she was like, I don't agree with this, but then she's looking at her son, and I was doing dead end jobs, not really going anywhere. I was kind of frustrated, didn't have any qualifications. I imagine that she was like, well, kind of at least he's doing something. So it's that weird mix of like the political and the very normal. So we never really clashed over it. But she did get some of her kind of quite anarcho friends to be like, sit down with Joe and and communist friends to be like, sit down with Joe and have a chat. They obviously it went in one ear and out the other.
Yes.
At the age I joined up quite old. I was 22, so I was like the old guy in basic training. Still at that age, I was, and with no politics. I mean, you're very vulnerable to the mythologies and the indoctrination. So yeah, and now we're both stalwartly anti-war and go and protest together, and everything's good now, man.
That's awesome. So yeah, we're gonna bring everyone on here in a second, but just gonna show off this shirt and give a shout out to a bar in northern London. I don't know if you've been. It's called El Comandante. You show up. It's right across the street from Emirates Stadium. It's an Arsenal.
Oh, okay, yeah. I know that's Corbyn's territory. That's why.
Yes. So the owner is a Bolivian socialist, and he fled South America after everything that happened with the U.S. and UK imperialism, Contras and shit. But he ended up opening a bar in northern London. He became a huge Arsenal fan. Really good friends with Jeremy Corbyn, and it's the only bar Jeremy Corbyn goes to after his events. And he has like one glass of red wine with I think his wife's Chilean or something, who also is a leftist.
Mexican,
so,
Laura. She's
Mexican. Yes, his ex is a Chilean. His ex-wife. But yeah, he was selling these shirts, and it's Los Canineros. It's the only Latino Arsenal bar in all that area, and
I'm gonna go up after this.
Yeah, after the pandemic shit, if it's still around, I'd definitely say swing by and say hi. He gave me his email. He's like, hey, if you ever come out, I'll give you Arsenal tickets. He gave me the shirt for free. Took a shot. Yeah.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Marcus, welcome, Marcus.
What up, Marcus?
I'm gonna, we'll kind of talk. If anyone goes over, I'll just, bring it back in. But Marcus, what do you have to say? Do you have any questions for Joe?
No, I mean, I've just been really enjoying. You guys have been great. I have just been sitting back and laughing. And I think it's just a good dynamic, and I just wanted to say it's great. So I'm going to leave again and just watch because no, it's been.
You're here. You're not allowed to fucking leave. No.
You're not allowed to leave. You.
Well, no, there's something that I did. Like obviously we've been talking about, or you've been talking about, like parallels, right? There's a lot of parallels between even the military, the veterans, groups, and also like the over love of veterans and whatnot. But I did have a question, like thinking about like how does the with the NHS, you guys having a healthcare system that's for everyone, is there a subsect of it that is for veterans? Because we've got an administration. Essentially, we've got a mini NHS for veterans,
VA.
and and then everybody else is like, "Hey, fuck off! You got to deal with the private healthcare industry." But I didn't know if like does the NHS have anything specific for vets that you may or may not be able to access because of the way that you exited the military.
No, I mean, we are. The NHS is obviously under attack. It's been stripped back. It's a thing where the US and British people, their arcs cross. You're trying to get it, and we're trying to hold on to it. But there are, because we don't have a VA here. All of our veterans aftercare, everyone's on the NHS. A lot of veterans stuff, to answer your question. But a lot of our veterans aftercare is done through charities, and that's been the case for a very long time. The Royal British Legion, founded 100 years ago, after the First World War, with Douglas Haig, the butcher of the Somme, was in charge of it. It was his little pet project, and various others have sprung up, all often very political. The kind of upstart challenger to the Royal British Legion is called Help for Heroes, which to me is a profoundly political thing. But yeah, and there was a whole constellation. There were thousands of other charities sprung up over the last 10 years for specific things, for specific areas, and so on and so on. But yeah, like we're on the NHS, and I think the NHS has caught up with veterans aftercare. It's still not perfect. We do now have a veterans department, which is led by a man called Johnny Mercer, who's a former army officer, terribly posh rugby chap. Johnny Mercer, commando trainee, commando artillery guy. He's an absolute specimen, and he's not terribly pop. He came into politics instrumentalizing the kind of veterans aftercare stuff. It was like, I'm going to help the lads, and he really came to Parliament on the back of that. But he hasn't really. He's a supine Boris Johnson loyalist, and hasn't likes to talk about veterans, but hasn't. Lots of veterans are very critical of him now, particularly over aftercare, but also legacy allegations, which is there's a similar thing in the US. It's the kind of the lawfare, the kind of hangover of allegations of abuse and murder and stuff by British troops, which is a really, really emotive issue here in this country. And he's instrumentalized that as well. So we now have a veterans, it's not a ministry, but a department, which he's in charge of. In my understanding, because he backed Boris, he was given this little pat on the head in his veterans department. So yeah, it's most of it's on the NHS, Marcus, to be honest, and we're all fighting to keep that. There are problems with it, not least that it's been increasingly privatized. But we're all kind of fighting to keep that, whereas you guys are trying to get something like that.
So I mean, like with the US, it's like a Frankenstein monster of healthcare. So for veterans who qualify for the VA and actually go through all the hoops to get in, like they've got varying levels of healthcare that they can get through the VA depending on their disability rating, X, Y, and Z. And then even within the VA, so like the VA is more of like the NHS, like they whole hospitals and everything. But with like the healthcare system, or like that we mostly talk about, we're just talking about insurance. Which is something that with the UK is like not even something that you guys even can really like. You don't even mess with it. Like it's not even a thing. You just go in there and you get the help.
Yeah, the doctor asks for your insurance card like while you're arterially spurting. Like he's asking for your insurance card before he will apply a tourniquet. And if you don't have one, he goes and backs away slowly.
Yeah, I had 5 stitches. It cost $5,000. without insurance, just for 5 stitches.
I remember I was in 2013. I was in Canada with a bunch of really cool ex-Vietnam vets and some guys who'd some 82nd Airborne guys who'd done a runner. I don't know if you're aware of those guys, and we were doing some stuff out there with them. And I remember this healthcare debate, I think, was going on, and I was in my head, I was like, "Oh, America's going to have an NHS," and these people were like, "No, this is just health insurance. This is all this is. It's like the most basic provision, and even then, it might not keep you alive." So it was hard initially because we kind of, I think, maybe not people on the left because we're fighting for it, but there's a tendency to take it for granted here among the general population that there's this thing. And it's also important to remember that was something that Second World War veterans won. We won that. Yep. We kicked out Lieutenant Colonel Winston Churchill and put in Major Clement Attlee, late of the Tank Corps, because his program was better. So it's strange that all these people who are like, "Oh, we love the soldiers," are the same people who are trying to cut the NHS down to a logo behind which there's just private companies. Because it's also part of the kind of mythology of Britain and the Blitz spirit and the solidarity of the Second World War. So there's really interesting discussions going on.
So are they trying to turn it? I mean, I remember during the Corbyn Johnson election in November, there were some redacted documents that Corbyn brought out in the middle of the debate. And he just like, here's the redacted documents about how he's basically selling the NHS to the United States. Yeah, and I personally look forward to investing in those stocks. I'm sure they're going to be sky high at some point. But
no,
we're not investing in NHS stocks. So it's looking forward. Choice.
I just got here. Please don't do this.
Welcome, Erica.
Hello.
Yeah, this is Erica. Joe, Erica, Joe.
Hello, Joe. It's nice to meet you.
You too. Yeah. I mean, that was I think Corbyn came out with them, didn't he? And kind of presented them at a press conference or something. But yeah, it's on the card.
A big deal.
Yeah, it's been on the card since. I mean, this is Chicago school stuff. This Thatcherism, the British version of Thatcherism, playing out, and they will sell it. They will sell it if they get a chance. Mm-hmm. It will be a tragedy. Whatever. I mean, lots of parts of it have been privatized already. They've been selling it off to Richard Branson and other highly morally upright, upstanding people like that. But we're trying to hold on to it. You know.
I mean, we just sold the VA off to a bunch of golfers in Mar-a-Lago, so there's similar situations.
Well, the guy who's in charge of the VA is actually like a straight up like historical revisionist who says like he calls the Civil War like the lost cause. Like he is like the guy who's in charge of our VA. Like there's an article that came out recently that Trump said, I don't like the lib that's in charge of the DOD, Esper. What if I made you the head of the DOD? I mean, what if I made you SecDef? Because, you have, like you said, he's completely supine, just bent over and ready to take it from Trump at any given moment and is ready to to be at his whim and beck and call because he fights the cultural war that Trump's interested in fighting.
Yeah, it's interesting you say the cultural war because so much of the battle for the NHS and these other things here is framed as this cultural, not an economic thing. It's not about economic or equality or anything like that. It's all this kind of this cultural war, which I think that the left has to be very careful about because in this country the right will win the culture war.
Yeah, I mean
we're losing now here.
We're talking about. I mean, we didn't even talk about Brexit, which is kind of wild since we've had you on for 40 minutes. No Brexit talk. But I mean,
North FC love Spitfire. Simple as.
Honestly, though, I feel like Brexit happened a decade ago.
It did happen a long time ago.
Yeah,
I literally forgot Brexit was a thing. Oh my god.
Yeah, they're no longer.
Brexit happened after 9/11, and it's been shit since then. I don't know what's happening in the world.
And I'll be honest, I was I didn't even vote in it. I was so the whole initial campaign around Brexit was either we can have a far right racist anti-immigrant out or a capitalist liberal pro-EU in. When I eventually was forced to formulate some politics about it, I ended up being a Lexiter. I don't know if you're familiar with that position, which was a kind of Tony Benn and Jeremy Corbyn originally had this kind of there's a critique of the EU. The EU's capitalist, it's undemocratic, and we could replace it with something better. But what we ended up with, the two poles, the two dominant currents were shitty Blairite, melty, we love the EU, stuff, or Nigel Farage's crypto fascism. So I mean, there was never really a place for that third position, which was an anti-capitalist critique of the EU, and
which is how Corbyn, like, well, he was caught in that same between a rock and a hard place too, right?
Exactly. And Corbyn is like a left-wing Eurosceptic, always was. Him, Tony Benn, the people like this. So yeah, and the whole thing just ruined it fucked the left, and I mean centrists. So there were active people trying to steer that debate for that reason, because it was something that Corbyn could trip over. And Corbyn was always isolated in the Labour Party. There was very few.
I think it's funny that you just described that dynamic between only two shitty decisions. Like, that's American politics in a nutshell.
Yes.
Like, through and through.
Yeah.
From dog catcher to president.
Yeah. I mean, that's why Corbyn was such like, he came. I mean, realistically, he was elected completely accidentally. It was a complete mistake that he was even allowed on, and then won a landslide. And politics in this country has been that for so long, like two bad choices, the lesser of two evils, however you want to frame it. So that when he came along, it was an absolute shock to all of us, because a lot of us on the left know Jeremy Corbyn as this kind of guy. He knows about everything. Like, you'll see him, he's late for a meeting, and he'll get there and he'll rush off because he's late for another meeting. He's just this mild-mannered old guy who's just constantly goes to meetings about really obscure left-wing causes. So it was a shocker that he even got that far. I suppose we have to look for positive. The left, it can either fall apart now, or it can try and build on that.
Well, Bernie is like the perfect equivalent to him, right? Because like in our media would tell you that like Bernie is constantly like at the head of a Stalinist movement, like literally trying to like see how many T-52s he can buy to roll down DC. But like really what he's doing is eating like cold coleslaw in a dark room, being like, oh, let's talk about healthcare. It's the most like boring, banal version of like a guy who just gives a shit and has like fought his whole life to like just try and eke out a meager better existence for the people that they support. And it just goes to show you that it doesn't matter how extreme you actually are, how radical your policies are, you will be framed as the next coming of Lenin or Stalin, no matter what you do, if you're anywhere to the left of Trump. Or Boris.
They're pushing that shit on Joe Biden's a Marxist now. Yeah. I mean, that's
Starmer the same mate, absolutely the same.
I'm sure if Joe Swanson, right? Is that her name from the Lib Dem? Swinson.
She's gone. She's
yeah. She was the Lib Dem head, and she was running for PM. But like, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, even if she was a threat to Boris Johnson, I feel like she'd be a Marxist at some point.
Here's your skills wallet. Marxist.
Skills wallet.
The Lib Dems.
I do want to ask you, I did say we were going to bring it up. I'm sorry to bring it back to one more question. There's a recent soldier who came out, a British soldier who is a Muslim, who came out against the British involvement in Yemen. Now, a few years ago, or last year, or 2 years ago, the U.S. passed the War Powers Act to stop the war in Yemen. Of course, Trump vetoed, didn't go forward. But there's a soldier, Ahmad al-Babati, who just came out in August against the war in Yemen. He's 22 years old, enlisted in 2017, and it's brand new. Do you have any, like, are you going to be working with him and like helping him on his path or getting his word out?
Yeah, I've been in touch through third parties. It's really about waiting for, and this was the experience I had. It's really going to be about waiting to see what the guy himself wants to do. I really admire what he did. I admire that he did it in uniform. It's interesting that he's Anglo-Yemeni. He was born in Yemen, joined the army here. It's interesting that his unit, he's in the Royal Signals, so he's a communicator of some description. But that unit has some connections with they send guys on exchange to Saudi, and some of their stuff is cyber warfare, drones, and so on. So he's a unique character and uniquely positioned because of his military experience, I guess. But it's really about waiting to see what the lad wants to do himself. I think, but there are lots of people here in the anti-war movement who helped me. Stop the War Coalition. We now have, for a few years we've had Veterans for Peace UK, so a UK chapter of Veterans for Peace over there. who've done some really good stuff helping resistors and stuff like that. But it just hinges on where the guy wants to go, and what legal ramifications kind of the military tries to push on him. And the military are always in a weird position, because if they really go after him to make an example, then they kind of pour petrol on the fire, and if they don't, then they're kind of letting something like that slide, which was designed to be a very public and obvious act of resistance. So yeah, I think we're just kind of waiting to see where the lad wants to go, but there's going to be lots of people who back him up. And also, it's interesting how he did it, because although the military is very popular here, as it is in the US, they always figure very highly in the polls in terms of public trust. The arms trade is not. Arms dealers are not. There's a lot more scope to criticize with less of the kind of cultural hero baggage bullshit that's attached to the military. The arms trade, and his main line of attack was like, cancel this arms deal, cancel the arms deal, and that, I think that puts him in a much stronger position than maybe I was, because I was resisting about a particular war. So it'd be interesting to see how he plays that hand, or his lawyers play that hand. But I think he's in a stronger position than a lot of the people who've come before him.
Yeah, kind of looking forward to seeing how that goes, because that's brand new. I mean, this is August 26th. That, this is very new. And I actually found it by looking stuff up for you, because you're actually mentioned in an article. It's like, yeah, and you did write something for him. Also, I want to mention, I learned about you through British hip hop in a weird way. Yeah, I listen to a lot of Low Key, Akala, Black the Ripper, but rest in peace. I know he died.
Put me in a song. Suddenly I had all these people saying you're in this song, and I was like, what? So I found out accidentally.
Yeah, if anyone wants to know the song, I always think it's Voice of the Voiceless, which it's not. But if anyone wants to know the song, hold on. He did it with, what was the name of it? Sorry.
I know it's on the soundtrack to the struggle.
Soundtrack to the struggle.
The album or the
Part
track?
1. Yes. You are mentioned in our.
I'll put it in the chat right now.
Yes. Soundtrack to the struggle.
Yeah. It's a really cool mention. And he's like I did a meeting with him last year. He's like the nicest bloke you will ever meet, and the smartest bloke as a public speaker. Have you heard of Akala? He's quite kind of similar.
Akala is brilliant. Yeah, I've listened to some of his speeches. Yeah.
So like forensic in what they say. It's absolutely brilliant to hear either of them talk about any topic really, whatever it is. So
you just taught me a new way to describe rap music, and I appreciate that. Forensic is a very very great word. I know exactly what you mean, like as far as like lyrical styles, and it's like, well, I mean, you guys have been using this English thing for a while, so of course you're better at it. But
some might say they might even have invented it.
Yeah, well, you can get caught up in that way. This is the new special relationship. Yeah, we're all on the same side.
I mean, if you want good ways to describe things, just bring a British person on your stream.
Right. Slight aside, but the other day I heard that fall is actually the original British English, not autumn. Autumn came later. Originally we said fall. Which completely ruined my day, to be honest, because I'm always like, what's fall? A lot of the what we describe and lament as Americanisms are actually in common usage in Britain, and then we abandoned them for some reason. I have no idea why.
I mean, I'm sure aluminum was originally aluminum instead of aluminium.
That's another one. We used to say that apparently.
Really? That was a shot in the dark.
Aluminium is such a better way to say it.
No, it's not.
It's not.
It's not.
Okay. The white trash comes in.
I'm going to tune in. I'm going to pop in for that one. Aluminium is no. We're going to just stop that discourse now.
We have a ruling from America. All right, everyone, if you put aluminium in the chat right now, if anyone writes aluminium phonetically in the chat repeatedly, don't do that.
Yes, the person that Mike Pence controlled my education funding, I should be the one determining who can say what and how, because I obviously know best. I am a linguistic expert. Look at my Twitter. All of my typos. Nope.
So, Joe, if you're not
heart,
familiar, Mike Pence, our vice president, was the governor of Erica State, the great state of Indiana. And the education funding, I mean,
he cut my busing. He like literally cut my busing. Like, and then he was like, and our schools are very spread apart, especially like where I was at. And so it's like you had to find your way to school, or else your parents would be thrown in jail for truancy, even though they're also working 50 hours a week each. And then if you like did make it to school, they wouldn't bus you home, and you just have to wait. It's just, yeah, it was fun. That was a lot of fun. Good, builds character.
I'll go with aluminum because of that.
Joe,
thanks, Joe.
I'll be outvoted anyway.
We demand that you do an American accent more often on the stream, because obviously we've also, well, mostly me, have slipped into the British accent. So we need you to make fun of us repeatedly. That needs to happen.
I'll try to slip it in. Now you said I have to do it. It's obviously really bad.
I actually got a question though. It's like, obviously the United States is the best country in the world. We know that. What's like, I mean, like, yeah, like what, like, when I get the view, like from the outside looking in to this absolute fishbowl of hell.
And it's strange. I think it's a funny one. I'm probably going to lean on a load of cliches here, but I think Americans who travel, the kind of American you'll bump into, just like tourists, and not the kind of Americans I've come to know and love, because I've also met loads of like solid working class Americans who are a totally different thing. I think it's just the ones you send here, and probably the ones we send to you, and the ones we both elect to positions of power and office. Like everyone outside those, like I'm down with. So yeah, but I don't know. I suppose also a lot of my experience, my initial experience of Americans is guys in Afghanistan, like these interesting characters I came across in Afghanistan, who are a very diverse group, obviously, but yeah, I think the first American I ever met, it was a guy. He was like, I don't know, it might even be a slur. He was like from the deep south, and he ran a logistics kind of warehouse, and he called himself Joe
Tom.
Dirt. I don't think it was his name, but he was like, I'm Joe Dirt. And he was from like Mississippi or something. That probably means something to you.
It's pronounced Joe Dirte.
That's what I was about to say. I didn't want to be the one. I'm really glad someone else did it.
Yeah, I felt like that was his like nom de guerre. but yeah, and so that my initial contact with an American soldier who I was serving with was this guy. But he was like, I can get you whatever you want, and he was like, I'll get you knives, and he had some. It almost looked like Amazon. Like we basically don't have the budget you guys have logistically, and he was like, come on, and it was like a military Amazon page, and he was like, I'll get you whatever you want, Gerbers, boots.
Oh yeah.
Those guys are the most corrupt and most fun dudes. They can get you anything. They are fucking the military out of so much money, and they have like moonshine stills set up in tents. They have like full like syndicates set up with the Taliban of like of profit sharing. It's like Catch-22 like in real life.
Oh, especially in August when you have to spend that military budget before the new year. When August hits, it's like, how many boots you need? You need 3 pairs, just in case. You need 3 pairs. It's August, right?
Yeah. See, the British Army are like walk until they wear out.
Well, I want to go over some stats here about the U.S. military or U.S. Army. Let's just stick to the Army. Let's not talk about any other branch. The Army itself, the United States has 1.3 million active duty troops in the U.S. Army. In the UK Army, the British Army, excuse me, the Queen's Royal.
We're not royal because we mutinied. That's everything else is royal, but the Army is just British.
Army is just Army. It's 79,300. So when we're talking about the numbers here and how, you being outspoken against the military, you leaving, when the U.S. does it, like we just had a woman, Vanessa Guillen, and rest her heart, bless her soul, and thoughts to her family, just went missing for like 3 fucking weeks on Fort Hood. And there's been like 9 deaths on Fort Hood in the last year, I think. But that's kind of how like when someone comes out against the military, they're just kind of swept aside. And with you, it's like you did a speaking tour. They're like, let's bring on this person who's against the Queen. And so, you know, just for like people watching, that there's a huge difference. And that's why the microscope's so high. And like we're doing our show, but you know, we still have to be careful in that sense too, with the US.
Yeah. It's a much smaller thing. I actually remember I had a good example of, I suppose, British thinking, and an example in terms of the size of the military, that a guy I know was special forces, and he went out to Iraq, was in Baghdad with Delta, doing house raids, like 3 houses a night, just kicking people's doors in and shit like that. But the rationale behind it, never mind, the rationale behind it was that, and the whole thing of going to Iraq was that the British would somehow, with their minute number of troops, would somehow like be a brake on American excesses. This was one of the arguments which span about that Britain's 12 soldiers would somehow restrain this massive.
A bit much, isn't it, mates? Maybe less artillery.
I know all about this. We've been to Northern Ireland, Malaya, everywhere. We know all about counterinsurgency, lads.
Some British understatement could be used for the American excess, right? Yeah, this would temper it.
Yeah, it gives you I suppose it gives you an example of the British kind of sense of themselves compared to the reality, where actually we're not very good at war. I'll be honest. I don't think we win many wars when we're not in coalitions.
Us either.
Maybe the Falklands, which is a fairly pointless exercise in my opinion. But we're not. We like to think of ourselves as expert counterinsurgents, for example, and that we're just not very good at fighting.
Joe, since you brought up the Falklands, can I ask, when you got, you were diagnosed with PTSD, like you said, myself as well. Yeah. But was a condition of your PTSD that you had a condition which prevented you from sweating ever? Did that ever happen to you?
No, that happens to only aristocrats.
Okay.
It's a Norman.
Norman
gene.
I thought so.
Like if you're Prince Andrew, for example.
So how's he doing, Prince Andrew?
He's doing great, right?
Still around. Yeah, he's still around, right?
He's in the sin bin. He's not allowed public duties now. Yeah. It fascinates me how still number one target that seditious communist Meghan Markle. But there's an actual probably there's arguments as an actual nonce, an actual paedophile in the family, but he's kind of brushed over. But still, all guns are pointed at Meghan Markle, who's come in and stolen one of our princes away with her communist propaganda.
Yeah, because she's black, right? That's basically.
That's
what it is. I mean, it's the voodoo. You know, that thing is like it's kind of like a gift that we all have from birth. Is that, you know, if we want you know, a rich white person, sprinkle on the voodoo and we'll steal them away from the British crown like nothing, because we can do that. On top of being able to play basketball, it's all wrapped into one.
That's it. I genuinely think Harry is fertile ground for joining the anti-war veterans movement. I really think that you can get him on, and you can get him on this.
Oh man, could we get Prince Harry?
Imagine what a coup. You know, I think he's susceptible.
He's in LA now, right? Didn't he like so. They just straight up left. They were like,
they just did a Netflix deal. You didn't hear about this? They just got they got a Netflix deal. They went full Obama. Like they got a show. It's coming.
I heard
she wanted him to do like Bear Grylls shit and like climb mountains and be a kind of adventurer. Apparently that's what it's going to be about. Harry wrestling crocodiles or whatever. I don't know.
Oh my god!
I'll fucking watch it. I'll watch it.
I'll watch it. I watched Bear Grylls growing up nonstop.
Yeah, Joe. If you radicalize the Prince,
affinity for SAS.
If you radicalize the Prince, Joe, can you bring him on stream sometime?
Well, Harry or Bear Grylls?
Either.
Both.
Either.
Yes. Either. Oh, both at the same time. I want Bear and Harry. Barry.
You know, so it's a weird, like when Bear Grylls became quite famous as an explorer, I kept thinking, I know that guy. I know that guy from someone. I realized he was in the reserve special forces, so he's in for about 2 years. Like he trades off this SAS thing, but he was a reserve SAS guy. I kept thinking, why do I know this guy? And I realized he'd been doing before he was famous, when I was still in the military, he did the Army's alcohol awareness videos.
Holy shit.
There would be a scene, like a good old English inn, and there'd be like a load of soldiers, squaddies would come in, and they'd be like quite raucous. And then he would be there leaning at the bar having a half pint of ale, and then he would like go through the third wall and he'd be like, "Drink responsibly, chaps," and go into this whole spiel. And so he that's kind of how he built his career, doing like army alcohol awareness videos. Jesus. And then he became this explorer.
Oh my god!
Never without a camera.
Can you find the video? Can you get that? Can we find that?
Let me look. Let me see if I can find it.
I'll try and find it.
We had a "Don't Be That Guy" campaign in the U.S. military. It was like a post on every base, just like "Don't be that guy," and it was always just like a really drunk dude getting arrested. It's just like, what guy? The DUI guy, or like the
cool guy,
or like the.
That was every guy in my unit. Yeah. Every guy was there.
That's every guy in the military. Every person in the military.
There were, a couple of months ago, there was a report that basically a battalion's worth of soldiers from across the army had been kicked out for drug use in the I think it was a period of the previous year. So that's also a kind of ongoing thing. 660 guys over a year had been for different chemical misdemeanors.
So who's going to legalize weed first, the UK or the US?
It has to be. Isn't it legal in some places in the US?
Well, in states, yeah.
So it's not legal there?
Yeah.
Not federally. It's not legal here.
No, it's still really frowned upon in the UK, if I'm not mistaken, right?
What?
Not personally, but
I had no idea. I just assumed it was legal. I don't know why. I just thought we were like the only ones that were just like, no, plant bad. That's crazy. I mean, it's not shocking now that I think about it.
Well, we're probably just the only country where you're going to do prison for 30 fucking years for having it. That's
is that the difference there? Okay, all right.
Maybe the difference. Big thing here.
Detail.
Versus the UK. UK doesn't have like the. I mean, maybe they do. I don't know. Do you guys have like mass incarceration and prison labor? Slavery?
I was going to ask if you guys had something similar to like the war when we did the war on drugs. If you guys had like your own little fun war on drugs over there.
Yeah, in a much lesser way, and in cost. I mean, drug offences and people of colour and stuff like that. Some of that it's a kind of pale version of what you have, but it's commonly the case that young black guys and so on get locked up for minor drug offences and stuff like that. I think that the prison population, I think, is you would see similar things, though nowhere near the scale that you have.
Yeah.
In your
I mean, I just watched a video the other day of Black the Ripper smoking on the London Eye. He was a huge cannabis activist, right? And he's like on his birthday, it was like 5 dudes just smoking blunts on the London Eye and hotboxing the Eye. It was great.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm in London. I think in London, you can kind of probably get away with more in terms of like walking around smoking weed and stuff. I don't know about the rest of the country. But I mean, London, like any capital city, is kind of an anomaly compared to the rest of the country. So I guess it's that thing where it's not legal, but it's decriminalized because it's so common. I mean, what cop is really gonna like do the paperwork of stopping someone smoking a joint? I think that's kind of how it plays out in London. That is, anyway.
I was gonna say they look for reasons to get to do that here. Like if you. If so in the United States, they can pretend to smell weed. They don't even have to smell weed. And then it gives them legal jurisdiction to be able to search your personal vehicle.
Yes.
It's directly correlated.
It's very normal.
They have a little like color chart too that they hold up. And they're like,
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
I've never had someone do that. And I've literally smelled like weed. It's like, they're like, okay, ma'am, have a good night.
Yeah.
I literally, or like here too, they have such a bad troop worship thing. I got pulled over for going almost 100 miles an hour on the highway when I was driving. I'm so sorry. Everyone's gonna be like, "Ugh, whatever." I fucking know I was tired, but they.
I was tired.
I'm just getting.
I went pedal to the metal. I was exhausted, so I just said, "Fuck it, let's go." I
was just trying to get back home.
My foot fell asleep on the.
God, have you guys ever tried to drive that drunk? No, just kidding. I wasn't drunk. But I got pulled over by a cop, and I was in Virginia because it's like this god awful part where you have to just like go down one straight highway, like the whole fucking state. And I got pulled over doing 100 and a 65, and the cop comes up, and it's like 2 a.m, and he's like, why are you going that fast? And I was like, oh, I'm coming off a leave. I'm really tired. And he's like, oh, you're in the Navy? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, all right, thank you for your service. Have a good night. And I was like,
Yeah.
And that's just what it is.
I had a very similar experience in DC, actually. I don't know if I've ever told this story on stream, but I was volunteering with like a veteran service organization in DC proper, and DC's a horribly segregated city, right? So I was in Southeast DC, which is majority black area of town, and I was down there doing a service project like building a fence at a school or something with the Mission Continues veteran service organization. And I left, and I was in a car that was so illegal. Like, I didn't have registration. I was speeding. I had a blinker that was broken. I sped into the wrong lane, and the cop pulled me over, and I was like, I am so fucked right now, right? And of course, this guy gets out, this fucking hot dog necked, like bald headed dude, just like utterly like fucking roided out dude, walks up to my car, and I'm like, hey. And he's like, and he looks at me and he literally says out loud, oh, like he audibly was like surprised when he looked at me. And I was like, yeah, man, what here's my license. And my registration is expired because I can't pass the emissions test because I can't afford a catalytic converter for my vehicle, you know? And he's like, oh wait, USAA insurance though. Are you a vet? And I'm like, yeah, I am. And he's like, oh, I was Marines. And I, of course, as an Army dude, I was like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't be friends, you know? And he was like, okay, dude. And he like walked away and came back. He's like, yeah, you're good. I'm not gonna give a ticket to a vet. See you later, bro. Like, and just like pieced out. Like, he was ready to tase me if I had been like 2 hues darker, you know?
I'm so sorry. I have to just be like, I have to pull Marcus into this for a second, talking about us getting pulled over. And hey, how many times have you been pulled over? Probably in the last
So it doesn't even matter how many. I just got one story, one thing to say. I got pulled over driving back on post-deployment leave, right? And I've got no shit. I've got like Marine Corps shit in the fucking back. Oh, hey, you're fucking, yeah. I just got back from my first deployment. Okay, well, hey, you're going 80 to 65. So here's your ticket. So
get wrecked.
Yeah, it's great that you.
No, it's fucked. No. If it makes you feel any better, if it makes you feel any better, base police have treated me the complete fucking opposite, especially in like Norfolk, which out here is our biggest naval base. It's the biggest naval base in the world, and it's a hellhole. And all of the MAs are ready to kill literally anyone, especially people in the military. And it is absolutely absurd. And it is like horrifying. And the fact that like, that's literally like what you have to fucking deal with off of that base. Like, I was horrified on base, and like just existing as a black man, that's like what you just get with any of these fucking cops, especially in like places like Virginia, to where you have like these small towns where it's like you get these weird cops that are like looking for a reason. I mean, that's what happened in Kenosha. Like, it was a small white town with these people like looking for an opportunity to do this like weird racist vigilante shit. And like, we had to deal with the gate guards, of course, because anyone that joins the military to be a cop is the biggest fucking nerds. Oh my God. Like, any kind of like security or like, I hate them.
I'm going to bring Joe back in on this conversation. So obviously, I was really. I hope
it was you.
I was thrown off, and I was walking around London. And I saw the cops walking around like the Shoreditch area. I was out for a pub crawl. I saw a bunch of cops. None of them carry weapons, right? They never carry. They carry like batons.
Increasingly, they do for like around Parliament, but no, our coppers are unarmed, and that's the big difference, I guess.
What?
Here.
Yeah, you call them coppers? Can you say that again? Do you actually call them coppers? That's just like what you say.
Yeah. We haven't like we also called them.
Can you come back every day?
So they don't have guns at all.
Some do. Increasingly, our police have been militarized.
Okay.
And you'll see that around like around government buildings.
Oh, okay. But like just day to day, they're usually not.
They have this thing. It's called policing by consent. So the population agree to be policed. Yeah, it's very British. Yeah, it's bullshit. It's total bullshit.
Oh, okay.
They'll still taser you and like beat you up, and you know, particularly if you're not white. We see that we have that stuff is happening here as well. but generally they're not armed. But we do call them coppers, and we also call them the Old Bill. The Old Bill.
Explain, please.
Let's see. There's a bunch of names, and they come from names of like people who are involved in developing the British police force. And I can't remember who Bill is, but there's a couple. I can't remember the name of the guy who founded it. The British police, because previously the army had policed Britain, and they decided that the army might side with the other side, and so they introduced this British police force. But we have a bunch of quite similar derogatory names for them, which I use liberally. Coppers is common, and the Old Bill.
What are some good derogatory names we can start using on our police force? Get some solidarity, international solidarity here.
Pork related.
Oh, pig. Yeah.
One, yeah. Man, I can't think. You put me on the spot now. I can't think of any others.
Do you call them like porkers or like
just pig, straight up
pigs?
Pigs.
Good.
We call them the feds as well. Obviously, they're not. We don't have an equivalent to but it's like, oh, it's the fucking feds. When we were
you know what? I'm just gonna make myself angry thinking about the difference in our police force.
Yeah.
It's like, we don't have feds. What do you fucking mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you got the MI5, right?
Yeah, but there are parts of the police which are like roughly equivalent, and now there's something called the National Crime Organization, I believe.
Well, I don't like that. I don't like the sound of that at all.
Exactly, it sounds fairly innocuous, but I mean, it kind of has that. But MI5 do I suppose they're like political internal security.
Oh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
That's
do y'all have like ICE? Like the equivalency of our DHS?
That's the we have
it's the people that like are the ones that
Border Patrol, CBP.
Yeah. Looking up these fucking little kids on the border and shit.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
So we have Border Patrol, but it's nothing. And I suppose they're roughly parallel, but I don't think they're anything like as violent. They obviously have the potential to be violent.
You mean they don't have a special forces unit called Vortec that goes into British cities? And
they probably do. It's like a really, really like it's not probably nothing like yours.
There's only 10. There's only 10 of them.
This thing where law enforcement is militarized. It's getting more militarized. We have that. Where all of a sudden they're like have their boots tucked. They have like military boots and chest webbing and stuff like that. But nothing like it's a shadow of what you have to endure in the US, I think.
I mean, I have to imagine that our police force could upgrade your military in a large way.
Yeah.
Like as far as just mobile ground units and vehicles,
IED-proof vehicles and shit. That I see going around in protests.
Oh, we have more special forces within our police forces in the United States than the U.S. Army has or the British Army has in troops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like 79,000 is nothing compared to like our SWAT teams and our tactical units that are tied in.
As I understand it, our it's 79 now, but our 80,000 soldiers is actually less than your combined special forces across all services.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Under the SOCOM umbrella, I think you're right.
And stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's vaster. I was rereading some of Cahill stuff recently about just the size, just comparatively the size of special forces stuff and everything that's been folded into it is.
Well, that's been part of the huge like neoliberal push, Joe. That like because libs fucking love the military. They think they're going to win elections if they depending on how hard they suck off the military. That's how they're going to win elections, and it doesn't work ever. Like we got Amy McGrath like trying to be like the most vet bro woman Trump Democrat running against this Senate Majority Leader right now. But we think that running against that is the way that we're gonna running to the right and being more nationalist, out-nationalizing the Republicans and telling them that we are actually the ones who care about patriotism and freedom more.
Yep, which is exactly just God. It's so bad.
There's no alternative.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really good. I was actually there's a guy I know, Joe Kennedy, who's written a really interesting book called The Authentocrats.
Hold on, Joe Kennedy, is this...
Joe Kennedy the third?
No, this is a different... He's a British author.
I was
Oh
about
yes,
to
yes,
bully
I have.
you.
I have
Holy
read some Joe
shit.
Kennedy from the UK, but lately this election has fucked me up with Joe
Now, I
Kennedy.
know this name crops up. I'm not sure about who, this other Joe Kennedy keeps cropping up, but my Joe Kennedy, British Joe Kennedy, has written a book called The Authentocrats, and it's about liberals who do right-wing shit to appear authentic, and most of it's made up. It's like working class people don't drink fucking cappuccino. Some of it's really banal, and so I would never be seen drinking a cappuccino. It would always have to be tea in a mug, because it's really like stupid shit. But part of it is that they have to love the military, they have to love the army, and say good things and be photographed near soldiers. And one or two of them in the this is in the Blairites and the kind of currents around Blairism. And so it's a problem here that liberals are fucking war horny. Sometimes they're more war horny than conservatives.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's like it's shocking when you see it. And there are particular figures. We have a guy here, Dan Jarvis, who the guy's legit. I know guys who served with him. He was an airborne officer. Apparently he's a decent guy, but his politics are like absolutely vanilla. He's not even a Blairite. He's more of like, he doesn't really have a political identity.
Yes.
He's more of a tool. He's more of an instrument than an ideologue.
That's Amy McGrath to us.
Really?
She is a female pilot. She fought. She did many campaigns, and the Democrats are like, "Hey, you want to run for office? We're going to put millions of dollars behind you, and you're going to be this vessel to beat this guy named Mitch McConnell, who's just hated." And it's disgusting. We did it. Who did we else use? I mean, we've done this as the Democratic Party. We just pick people who, Pete Buttigieg. Oh, you served overseas.
Kerry.
Let's
John Kerry, a prominent, like,
They
look
don't-
at me and all my Purple Hearts, and they're
these
just
aren't
like,
liberals,
you're a traitor.
They're not Democrats. You're just,
Well, that's
you're a vessel for whatever corporation is paying you enough money. Like, it's.
Yeah.
Sorry, Marcus. Go ahead.
It's
No,
like,
well,
this thing. It's like I suppose it's. I try and do veterans politics to the degree that is a thing as class politics, but a lot of veterans in the centre and right do veterans politics as a really kind of the liberal version of identity politics, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
Where like being a veteran gives you there's a certain like cultural and political capital in that. It's like, oh, it's a veteran, and therefore we should. And I'm really trying to find ways in my own activism and stuff to wean people off that, shit. Like, and there's a history here of after the Second World War and the First World War of veterans unions, which were like, we will not fetishize the military. We're here to get a better settlement as part of the working class, wherever we come from, wherever our background, and we're not going to like lead with the fact or like fetishize the fact that we're veterans, because that's what the other side does. We're here as like one edge of the working class, but that what you're talking about, and it's obviously happening on both sides of the pond. It's really worrying, and just it's kind of vacuous, shitty politics. It's just like lionizing the veteran to hopefully slide them into a safe seat, we would say here, like a safe constituency.
Which is like a direct obstacle to establishing ourselves as like you said, a facet of the working class, right? Like you're separating us literally from, like, you're putting us on a pedestal of valorization and romanticization of like, this is something that we can never live up to, when really we just want to be a part of the struggle for the working class in general.
Exactly. And it's in my mind, like, it's obviously dehumanizing to demean people and like, badmouth them. That's demeaning for any group of people, but it's also in a different way, it's dehumanizing to like put people on a pedestal.
Yes.
You kind of lose what they are and the fact that they have basic human needs when you lionize veterans, for example, or anyone. So it's like a different kind of dehumanization. It's never really about them. It's always about, in an electoral context, it's always about, the party getting enough seats as it is in this country to win, and so on. And it's really just, it's just bad politics. It really grips me every time I see this playing out. Some people go along with it, obviously, but it's a sad state of affairs that just the level of political debate and the level of electoral politics does that stuff.
It's something that you had hit on earlier about, like, I guess, like, just neoliberals being more dangerous when it comes to, quote unquote defense, but just imperialism. Like we're seeing that. I think that what we're seeing it with Joe Biden's policy proposals. What he's done in the past, and then some of the ads that they're even having, like everything. So many things are framed in like reference to Russia and China. He is to the right of Trump when it comes to what he wants to do in Iraq and Afghanistan. So yeah, that's like one of those things where the neoliberal that is getting his pockets lined is more dangerous than an ideologue like Trump that can't even. He's too stupid to make friends with the ghouls in some cases.
I really feel like on that same point that the only time Trump has kind of suddenly the center has started being like, oh, he's quite statesman-like, is when he's blown shit up. I can remember it happened after that SEAL raid in Yemen. It happened after the mother of all bombs.
Yeah.
It happened after, remember they started hitting Syrian regime targets.
Yep.
Yeah.
And those are the only times when I was like, suddenly these liberals were like, actually, maybe he's okay.
Well, that's what they kind of do with George Bush as well. They'll so yesterday, of course, was the greatest national holiday, 9/11. Super annoying. It's like legitimately some of the most aggravating time, like every year to be a veteran, because you just see people arguing about who loves war crimes more in the name of people that they send over there to die for oil. It's absolutely just like demoralizing. But I mean, even yesterday, like we saw our vice presidential candidate say something about how he pulled us together as a country in time of adversity, and it's like, what? Like, and there were people that were praising him, like, we talked yesterday a lot about the rehabilitation of George Bush and how and why the liberals feel the need to do this now. But it is insane that it's like they really just like the mask just comes off and they show that they are so much more aligned with the conservatives they claim to be the opposition to, than they actually are. It's oh god, it is weird, like hearing like a lot of like the same things happening with our politics and then with your politics, but it's like the diet version of it. I feel like it's like ours is like just full on, just like militarized police, just fascism in any way that they can, and then it's like yours sounds almost like something that like liberals would want in a way, even though like you obviously are like, no, this is absolutely still horrible. You know what I mean? So it's really interesting to hear like that parallel. It's God, I'm tired.
It's interesting that in the US, it's very interesting you say that, Erica, because a similar process of reconditioning has happened here, particularly with the Remain campaign, that some of the key figures of Iraq, the architects of Iraq, Tony Blair, Alistair Campbell, people like that, their involvement in Remain has reconditioned them with the center of politics. They came out for Remain and kind of somehow reinforced their EU liberal credentials. And I really believe that part of the reason they got involved in that was for that end. But we see that Tony Blair's never off the telly. He should be a pariah. Alistair Campbell should be an absolute pariah. He's the kind of Goebbels of this whole. He was the propagandist who made the intellectual case for Iraq. And yet these people persist in public life, and they've used the Remain campaign to kind of recondition themselves. I suppose it's strange because I suppose Blair is nominally a liberal and Bush is a conservative, but how on war, these people are the same, the exact same. Sometimes liberals are worse, as Marcus was saying.
Blair has as much blood on his hands as George Bush. I mean, as Dick Cheney as well. Yeah. They all have blood on their hands. Blair is for the left there, he's the George Bush of the UK. It's like he led that country into a unjust, illegal war with no allies except for the US.
Yeah.
And so
and I don't want to kind of hit again like the UK almost being like a watered down version of the US. I don't want to take away from the terribleness, that have gone on in your government. But yeah, in some of these ways, like Trump or even in Boris Johnson, like they don't have the ability to sneak things through, or they don't have the ability to scam, because the fact that they're so hated means that people watch them closer. And also, you know, like you can get some wins over just, hey, we resisted against Trump, and you know, I'm not sure how much you followed the impeachment thing, but it largely performative, right? You know, just something done on paper with zero effect. But you know, I don't know.
I saw a great video of like
bleak shit.
I saw a great video of like Starmer the other day being like you know, to Boris being like, people should be able to get tested. This is common sense. What the hell? And someone was like, oh my god, like a textbook case of taking someone to task.
Here's for the Mark I British centrist, who is a thug but operates behind this kind of veneer of civility. They're all about civility. He is the haircut that launched 1,000 ships. They absolutely love him. They absolutely love him, and he is the most vacuous politician. Like, I mean, at least Blair is a bit edgy, in a way. Like, if I was to make an argument, it'd be like Blair has a checkered past, but Starmer is this completely bland, bland frontman, and his I wouldn't even describe him as a Blairite necessarily. He's tried to distance himself from that. Behind him, there are Blairites for sure. But yeah, he's this kind of it's just completely vanilla, just kind of blob.
Is this like this way of
on telly and makes some mild criticisms and says, Boris Johnson, get a grip.
What are you doing?
That's the kind of language he uses. Like,
but he does a thing like this too, where he's like always like slightly off center, and he's like, he only moves his head. Boris, what do you think this is?
So I have to cut in here real fast, everyone. Now, we've been on the call for 90 minutes. Joe, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so we'll wrap up with you soon. Now, thank you for coming on. But one more thing I would just want to play. We're going to play a game, and I'm just curious, since we're all fans of Spice Girls, we're going to find out who has girl power as far as our favorite girl bosses. So we're going to go around, and I'm going to give Dick, Marcus, and Erica time to think on their girl they want to choose. Just find out if they do indeed have girl power. We're going to go with Margaret Thatcher. The easiest
You
one.
bitch!
It's not the only person. It doesn't have to be British.
Any girl or a Spice Girl? Any woman who we...
Oh no, just any woman. So Margaret Thatcher, does she have girl power?
Does she?
Did she have girl power?
I don't understand the.
So
so
the Spice Girls had girl power, right? They pushed to the nation, to the world. They captivated the entire world, just like K-pop has captivated the world now. Spice Girls were a staple to my childhood. I was 13, 14 years old. Baby Spice was my crush. Fully admit. Now they did. There was this video of, I think it was Scary Spice, Mel B, and it was asked if people have girl power. Like, oh, are they replicant to this British loving like woman feminism?
You're talking about Eric Andre. Yes, and he responded with Marcus. What did Eric Andre say in response to Margaret Thatcher?
He was like, did you think she had girl power when, like, it's like one of the many fucking fucked up things that
she funded right-wing death squads in Ireland.
Yeah. It's like when you sent death troops up in Ireland, and then they're just like this. Oh wow, that's awkward.
So does it have to be a British woman that we have to pick, Mr. Lorax?
No. Yeah, girl power.
But also, I'm just kidding. It would be a fun game if Joe was prepared. I kind of threw him off on this.
I mean, I want to literally choose a Spice Girl. I want to choose Victoria Beckham. She has all the girl power. I'm jealous. She married David Beckham. I'm super jealous. He's objectively the most beautiful man. Ooh. You know,
awful footballer, but great looking guy.
I heard he can bend it. That's what That's what's most important.
It was born that way.
Wait, Joe,
I think
So go ahead and respond to that.
Joe.
So does Margaret Thatcher have girl power? Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
No, she doesn't. No, zero girl power.
Do you know about that here?
What?
Like, do you guys have that there as well?
You have girl
where
power?
It's like when women do something awful, like liberals jump off their fucking seats and they're like, "Yes, queen!" Like, it's like awful. It's awful, and we see it constantly here.
You got to watch Bodyguard on Netflix, Erica.
No,
exactly the same. Yeah, that's a really good example actually of like British conservative girl power. She's the foreign secretary in there, in that show. But yeah, definitely they do that here as well. Erica, yeah, it's a thing.
I would say the Kent State gun girl for me. She has girl power to just draw mass amounts of people to come yell at her.
She helps bring the left together, and I think that's really beautiful.
Joe, if you don't know who it is, please look up Caitlin Bennett.
I have seen Gun Girl.
Oh, yes.
She just got chased into like a back room of a bagel shop the other day. Yeah, UCF. Yeah. So those are comrades now because she just does that. She just shows up to places and says super inflammatory shit just for her stupid ass YouTube channel.
And shits her pants at frat parties.
Yeah, and she shit her fucking pants one time. There are images.
Oh, fuck.
Caitlin Bennett shit her fucking pants one time at a party. And we are
never going to let that down.
She shit her fucking pants.
And we shouldn't.
There's a lot of there's probably a good more than one veteran that's like, hey, sometimes shitting your pants happens, and so
not one time.
We don't want to pants shit shame, okay? Because sometimes.
I mean, I think sharting. Sometimes a shart happens. We can't deny a shart.
Yeah.
But like a full on, just like
there was a turd involved. There was a solid turd involved with her shit.
Yeah.
And passed out.
I don't want to tone police. It's just I think we just can't be ableist against people who shit themselves.
Also, it's such a veteran thing how this conversation goes from the high politics to the should sharting be shamed.
I'm really glad that's the solidarity across the ocean. This is where we win.
Special relationship.
I wanted this interview to happen so bad. Not only because I listened to a lyric saying you want to support the troops, but you don't support Joe Glenton from Low-Key, but also I did want to show that there is international solidarity with left vets. And we're not a separate military. We're both part of the imperialist powers of the West, and we've continuously been part of the imperialist powers of the West. So just in kind of, my little soapbox is this is so important to build that, and to not look at other countries as like, oh, you're different. No, we're an international. Left flank vets is internationalist. We do support veterans who are fighting for their respective causes in their areas. So we're not just U.S. military. We are in solidarity with the British military fighting against their military industrial complex, because no matter what country you go to, as long as there's capitalism involved, there's military industrial complex, because that's how you get your money. Arms sales, drug trade, just things like that are going to flow into the pockets of the wealthy and the ruling class, and we continue to let it happen. And that's why Left Flank, we feel it's super important to get these voices out and push against our Western imperialism that continues to devastate Black and brown countries across the world. And Britain was a big part of that in the 1800s. 17, 18, 1900s. U.S. is now just taking their reins. We have over 190, 200 bases across outside the United States. We're no different. We're both imperialists, and we're fighting against that.
The sun does not set on the American empire.
Yes. Well, cheers, everyone.
Thank you all.
On that note,
thanks, Joe.
Any by the way, Joe, anything you want to say to us?
Just I've been watching you guys for a while, and I really like what you do. There have been attempts to kind of do something similar. I think there's a space in this country for a left-wing veterans organization, and so I look at you as a kind of model for that. As I'm kind of thinking about what the next phase is here, because as in the US, there's a long tradition of that in this country, of veterans coming together over particular issues and fighting for a better world. So it's very interesting. I'm sure our discussions will continue. for after this. But no, thank you for having me on. It's really nice very refreshing to talk to you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here,
Take
Joe.
care.
Good night, everyone.
Take care.